If you've been doing a ton of research on the state of South Carolina, you've probably realized that it is an amazing state to live in. But there are 10 things you should know before you pack your bags and move here. Hi, I'm Whaley, your favorite Greenville realtor. The first thing I've got to mention is the pollen here. Now, we get so many amazing blue sky days. We have a wonderful spring with flowers blooming, but what does that mean? It means you get pollen. And for people who are not as used to seasonal allergies and having a lot of pollen around, it can be a bit of an adjustment. I've personally found that it takes most of my clients about 2 years or so before they adjust to all the seasonal allergies that are here in South Carolina. The number 2 point that I have to mention is that you'll live a slower lifestyle here. Now, a lot of people decide they want to move to South Carolina for a different lifestyle. And if that's you, then this might be a great fit for you. But if you're someone that's used to living life at 100 miles a minute and that is how you want to continue to live life, this might not be the fit for you. South Carolina, you're going to see people waving to you in your neighborhood. You're going to get a lot of friendly faces. People are going to be talking to you in the grocery store. But that also is going to come with the fact that you're probably going to be slowed down in that grocery store line. It's going to take you a little bit longer to get through than maybe in some big cities in other parts of the country. You might spend a little bit longer waiting for your food. Things like that are going to be a little bit different here in the South. So if you're not accustomed to that and that's something that you need, it's something you really should pay attention to. The next point that I have to mention is we've got a lot of critters and pests here. Now, we get a lot of sunshine, we get a lot of rain, we get a lot of clear skies, but that also comes with the fact that critters can really grow here and it's something you need to pay attention to. In a lot of the parts of the state, we'll have things like alligators. Now, when we're up here in the upstate, it's too cold. We don't get the alligators here, but we do get the insects. You do get the cockroaches. And by the way, we call them palmetto bugs here because we wanted to fancy them up a little bit for you. So we get all of those things. We have termites that are in our area as well. We're one of the top states for termite activity. So make sure if you buy a home here in South Carolina, you get a termite bond. The next point I have to mention is the topography and the soil here. So when we think about the topography, a lot of the area is really flat. Here in the upstate, as you get further north, because it is a mountainous area, you'll see a higher elevation, you'll see more hills. So it's a little bit different in this area, but a lot of the state of South Carolina is very flat. So the next thing I'd also mention is the soil. Something that most people are not accustomed to whenever they relocate here is that we have red clay as our soil. And the issue with the red clay is if it gets on anything, if you don't get that off within 24 hours, it's basically stuck forever. So just keep that in mind. If you go out and you see a home and you start to see a little bit of red clay on the foundation, that is normal. That is our soil. That's what it's made of. Number 5, the humidity and the heat. If you're not used to humidity, you're not used to heat, South Carolina offers a lot of it. It can be very similar to the pollen effect, where it's going to take you a couple seasons to get used to that. In most of this state, you're going to experience humidity all 12 months out of the year. Now, as you get into the upstate and some of the other parts of this state that are a little bit higher in elevation, the mountains tend to block some of that humidity and it tends to be lower levels once you get outside of the summer months. So if you're someone who's not used to humidity, you don't necessarily love it, those are some things you want to consider when you're relocating to South Carolina. And you want to make sure that you're going to pick the right location that's going to fit your weather needs. Number 6, now of course I've mentioned that topography is pretty flat here. That means that you can experience some flooding in this area. Now we do have the beaches, we have hurricanes that will hit in our coastal areas. So those are things that you really want to pay attention to. Make sure whenever you're searching for housing that you're looking at the floodplain. See if you're going to need to carry flood insurance. The whole state isn't necessarily in a flood area, especially as you get away from the coastline. You tend to see less places that are in flood zones. Here in Greenville, we have some areas, if we get some crazy rain because of rivers, you might see a little bit of flooding, but nowhere near to the degree that you see in the low country where it floods very frequently throughout the year. One of the next points you should consider is the tourism in the state. The state has a lot of tourism that happens in a lot of key locations. You tend to see a lot of the tourism that are going more towards the beach towns, but Greenville itself has also attracted some tourism itself because of how beautiful it is and how great the downtown is and all of the recent awards that it's gotten. Make sure you consider the weather. I've already talked about the humidity, but another thing to consider is in certain areas of South Carolina, you don't feel like you get the whole 4 seasons effect. For some people, that's exactly what they want. They don't want to ever see snow. So the further down in the south into the state that you go, that's where you'll experience less snow. For people who want to experience all 4 seasons, of course, get up into the northern part of the state. Here in the upstate, we get the true 4 seasons effect. Now, this is something that I've actually lived out. I have worn shorts on Christmas Day and the next day it's like 34 degrees. So it really does vary with the temperature, pretty extreme at times. So that's something you want to pay attention to. The higher up you get, like in the upstate, it tends to not have as much variance, but we still definitely have variance in our climate. So it's just something to pay attention to if you're thinking about relocating to our area. Something else to consider is big city amenities. If you're someone that's used to riding a big metro rail, if you're used to going to pro sporting events, if those are the things that you're accustomed to in your lifestyle, South Carolina might not be the fit for you. Now, depending on which area of the state you move to, you go to a place like Charleston or a place like Greenville, they're gonna offer 95% of what most people are looking for. They're not gonna have the pro sports teams, but a lot of the other things will be offered in those locations. But if you move to a smaller town like Aiken, you might not get all the amenities that you're accustomed to and used to. So just make sure you're really doing great research on that individual city to make sure it has everything that you're looking for. And the last point to consider is we have a lot of Southern cuisine here. Now, I love Southern food. There's some really amazing restaurants here in our area. But you also have to consider if you're someone that's not as accustomed to having more fried food, having grease, having some of those things, depending on where you move to in the state, you might not have as many options that you might be accustomed to. The bigger cities, again, when you go back to Greenville, Charleston, Columbia, those places, they're gonna offer a wide variety of food. They're gonna have a little bit more diversity in their cultures. So this may not be an issue for you, but it is something that you really should check into depending on where you're moving to in the state. So there you have it. There's 10 reasons why you may not want to move to South Carolina. Like I mentioned, South Carolina is a phenomenal state. I've lived in several different places and I just love this state. It offers so many amazing things, and you can find some of the other videos on our channel where I talk about all the positives, but I want to tell you the truth because this is such a big move for you and I want to make sure that you know all the facts before you make your move and before you pack your bags.